Good day, class. So today we're going to begin our formal lecture in Architectural Design 1. So I'm going to introduce to you with the architectural design process. Okay. So let's begin the introduction to architectural design. So from the most rudimentary shelter, the lean-to, the most complicated edifices, the human civilization witnessed the exponential evolution of its built habitation within the small epoch of the Earth's existence. Architecture became the means of adapting to the diversity and complexity of humanity's behavior environment, in a way a tool for survival and the production of status and mental state. So from the lean-to class to from the lean-to here, this is a very basic shelter up to the most modern and large residential buildings from now. Okay, so these are all examples of architecture as they have evolved through time itself. Okay. In your architecture history, we're going to study those in detail. So as human society ventures to greater heights, there's a great call to establish order, efficiency, and accountability. During the onset of the 21st century, multiple fields of profession increasingly adopted the scientific method as the framework of innovation and industrial revolution. Likewise, the architectural field adopted this zeitgeist to further its contribution to society. Okay? But architecture class is not something which is just recent in the 20th century. It has been existing since ancient times, and it's more predominant during the time of the great pyramids of Egypt, where you can witness the first architect Imhotep uh, design mm, uh, the structure with a religious context to it. Okay. So architects develop the architecture design process for them to design buildings that meet the needs. So this is important class when you're designing. So when you design class, you have to make sure that you meet the needs and desires of the inhabitants. So design edifices that fit the surrounding context. So it should harmonize with its environment and to design structure to comply with existing laws and regulations. So these are our functions, as this will be your future function as future architects. You have to design buildings that is functional to the users. At the same time, it should comply with our building laws. Okay. So the design process is a tool utilized to formulate design solutions that achieve the desired state based from a given set of parameters. However, the process itself is iterative to accommodate re-evaluation and explore alternative design solutions to further improve the design. This is to address unforeseen issues and concerns that may arise during the process. Okay, so this only means less that when you do your design process or when you utilize your design tool, it is not a linear process like in mathematics wherein you arrive at the answer immediately. So it is a long process. It involves a lot of reflection. It involves a lot of study before your design can be considered. Before you think that that is the correct and the correct answer, the correct design solution, it has to pass a lot of things. Okay, so this is the design process class, but in the international standards set forth by the Royal Institute of British Architects, it has only four design process has four stages, which is initiation, planning, execution, and closure. This I picked. So initiation is when you're going to begin the process. Planning is when you're going to prepare, modify, refine, inflect, get feedback from the client. Execution means going to construct, and then closure is when the building is already finished. It is the stage of your re-evaluation as stated here in the design process. Okay, now let's begin initiation. So the starting point of a design process where the architect identifies the problem and further develop into its other contexts as behaviors, needs, financial, natural, man-made environment. So this is the phase class where you're going to identify the behavior of the users who will be utilizing the building, then how much their budget will be for that structure, then what is the surrounding natural and man-made context within the vicinity where the project will be located. Okay. And as such, in initiation class, in the initiation process, you have to understand class where the sun will uh, pass through in the property so that you're able to orient the faces at the right angles. or arrange them in accordance with that data. Okay, so this is a stage wherein you're going to determine where the wind will pass by so that you can have extra cooling for your structure. Okay, that's the process of initiation. For preparation, so similar to the scientific method, architects needs to collect data to derive analysis. Okay, so without data, the architect cannot achieve a sound design solution, which may likely lead to subjective assumptions and failure to grasp important aspects of the design problem. So this is something you have to be very careful plus. Okay, that's to make subjective assumptions. Um, Architecture class is not simply um, it's not like fine arts. Architecture is the art and science of designing and constructing buildings. It means that you have going to utilize the left and right sides of your brain simultaneously. Okay, so you have to refrain from falling into the trap of becoming a mm, too artistic. Okay, you have to be technical as well, so that you can present to the client the best possible solution given the financial constraints and limitations, given the limitations of the site. Okay, so possible data requirements with the client preferences and behaviors is very important. The topography, technical description of project site, budget, etc. Then it's also the phase where architects utilize several tools to analyze given data. So at the right side here, class, is what you call your proximity matrix, which is the most basic tool that you're going to use. So it is the most basic tool, uh, but it is not the only tool in architecture as well. There are a lot of tools in architecture to arrive at a correct design solution. But since you're on design one, so I'm going to introduce to you the proximity matrix. So this is what you call the proximity matrix class. So it's relatively easy to use. All you have to do is list the corresponding spaces. Then you make a legend here. For example, the parking and the porch, find their intersection. So the parking and the porch should be adjacent. But the living room and the parking would be just nearby. But the back porch and the parking is not adjacent. Okay? Then there are also areas which are not related. For example, the master bath and the parking are not related. Okay? But this is just an example class. Before you're going to arrive at a proximity matrix, which will be relevant to your project, you must really study the needs of the clients, uh, study their behavioral patterns and what they really want to achieve with their proposed project. So in synthesis, in this process phase, the architect is processing multiple sets of parameters and tries to synthesize them to create an educated guess and produce a number of possible alternatives. The bubble diagram is one of the tools that architects employ to enable them to discover constraints and opportunities of the design problem. The bubble diagram illustrates the interrelationship of spaces. So you can only in the bubble diagram class, you're going to set the interrelationship of spaces, your adjacencies, your connectivities, and at the same time you're going to have basic graphs on how big the spaces will be. But this is not yet detailed. Okay, it's important to note last here. This paragraph states that put in simple terms, when you do your bubble diagram class, it does not mean that it will be the final design solution for the project. You may have to make a lot of bubble diagrams to fully understand the scale of what you are working on. Okay, so that's why you have to look for alternatives and you have to synthesize the problem really well, okay, and understand it. After you have understood it last, that's the time when you're going to modify in this alternative. So this one is what you call your preliminary design. In your preliminary design class, you already have an understanding of how big the spaces will be. So these are no longer just mere bubbles. Okay, it has a size, a scale, and it has a location. Okay, okay. So alternative, the outcome of exploring multiple alternatives may arise unanswered minor problems. The issue is inherent with all processes, even with the most conscientious, thus refinements must be executed. The stage intends to further elaborate or define parts of the layout that may have some minor lapses and lacking details during the design development. Okay? Because during the design development class, you're just looking into the general context of the problem. Okay? But you have to really refine it. You have to put things into details so that you'll have a better understanding of the design solution that you have arrived, if it is the right answer to the problem. Then the draft. So the architect has arrived at the initial design proposal. However, this is not the end of the design process. The draft is an initial state of the proposed design, thus must undergo rigorous evaluation and synthesis based from the feedback of the client. The presentation of plans and how you communicate to the client is crucial to establish a favorable impression and good architect-client relationship. Okay, so in architecture class, you have to have good relationship with your clients, and that can only be achieved if you're going to have good communication skills. You have to communicate your design concept well, um, to the client so that he or she will understand what you are presenting. So the client may ask you to make several revisions on your draft. The client may ask you to move a bedroom here, there, or add additional spaces. So that's the process of the draft. So at this stage, you are making sure that the client will get what he or she really wants for the project. Okay? So evaluation. In this stage, the initial design proposal draft will be subjected to a rigorous process of evaluation to identify overlooked problems. So you're going to look for overlooked problems. Then, during the formulation of the design solution, then the participation feedback of the client are crucial in this stage since the client is presumed to be the future user. So, in order for the project to be successful, class, this is something that you must always gain the support of the client. Okay. Then more materials required during the stage is not limited to models, 3D renders, and printing plans. Feedback. So feedback is information that serves as the basis for resynthesizing or reworking of a design solution. The existence of this information hopes to create an improved version of the design. So take note this one, improved version, and eventually approved by the client when the premises of the feedback are met. However, the given feedback must also be critically evaluated through the lens of the architect's professional practice. Not all feedback are beneficial to the client, especially if they violate existing regulations and ethical practice. Okay, so for example, this one class, um, I don't know if you're already familiar with the concept of firewalls. There are some clients who may want nga architect, can we place a window over the firewall? Okay. So that feedback class is not necessarily good because when you make an opening in your firewall, that's a violation of the National Building Code or PD 1096. So this is the time when your knowledge of the building laws and professional practice comes into play, wherein you must inform the clients of the different laws and codes that govern our nation. Okay? This is why clients hire professionals for their projects. Okay. Next is action or selection. In this stage, the client will select the most suitable or ideal scheme for implementation into working drawings. Also, the approved design will act as the basis for the creation of the contract documents. So at this stage, class, you have already produced several drafts. The client will have to select what scheme. he he or she really likes. Then these schemes will be the approved design will be the basis for the creation of the contract documents. So your contract documents will be the design drawings or the blueprints. This will be discussed in further detail when you reach your professional practice in your third year. So I'll be your instructor by then. So hopefully you'll be able to reach that level class. But I trust you that you're going to study hard, okay, and work hard. Implementation. At this stage, when the architect makes all the necessary drawings and documentations for the construction or project, the phase of the design process will be discussed in detail in the consequent subjects of architectural design, architectural theory, building tech 1 to 5, and professional practice. Okay, so implementation class, when you the the drawings needed for construction will be done, then it will in the process of the construction itself. Okay. Now evaluation is the final stage. Now this is the stage class when the building is already finished. So after the project is implemented, there will be necessary evaluation how the building is performing in multiple aspects such as compatibility in the use, capacity, structural integrity, MAPs, etc. This will ensure that the intended design goals are met. However, if there are insufficiencies of the design, the information derived from the phase will enable the architect and allied professionals to formulate correct uh, interventions. This phase will discuss in detail the consequent subjects of architectural design, architectural theory, building tech 1 to 5, and professional practice. Okay, I'll be your instructor for this one when you reach your higher year. Okay, so this is your basic introduction class to the architectural design process. Um, I hope that you gain something from this one. Okay, if you have further questions or inquiries, make a comment or send an email uh, directly to me. Now, for our course class, when you begin your first quiz or first sign plate, like what I've said, I'm going to upload a design review of all your plates at once. The purpose of that is so that you'll learn something uh, from my feedback for each and every one of you. Okay, the purpose of that is that you'll improve. Okay, don't worry, your name will not be written, will not be shown. Just require you to write your student ID number at the lower left side of your plate or project. See you next week, class, and I hope you understood something. So after this one, I think I'm going to show you some of the projects that I have been involved with in the past. Okay, so I hope that's okay. This is just a rundown. Let's see. Okay, so these are some of the projects I got involved with when I was working overseas. This, okay. So I was a one of the consulting architects for this one. So the project is worth $8 billion in Saudi Arabia. This is another one of our more complicated designs in Jeddah. So this is a part of the company that I worked with for 5 years, Arcade Engineering Consultants. These were their projects back then. So some of the projects I worked with, residential project work when I was in the Philippines. So I don't know if I included everything. Okay, so another one. So I'm really into modern design. Okay, so this one is a project for in Villanueva. This one is in Mountain Pines. This one is in RER. This one in Santa Cecilia. Okay, so let's just run down. So this is most of the projects I got involved with in the past. So hopefully in the future you'll also have your own and you'll be successful architects also. This one is in Xavier University. So thank you, class. So I hope that you learned something from this one, and I hope that you all pass this course. Okay, so passing is not really that hard, but it's not also that simple as well. All you have to do is work hard for it. Okay, so thank you and see you next meeting.